All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending. My name's Drew with Learning Upgrade, and today I'm going to be going over how you can support learning beyond the classroom. I'll be providing a guide to Learning Upgrade and Learning Circles. For those of you that have just joined, I'd like to go back one slide. If you already have WhatsApp downloaded on your phone, fantastic. If not, maybe take a chance to download it. You can scan the QR code I'm showing here, and we'll be doing a live demo or simulation so you can see what it looks like to create a learning circle using WhatsApp in your own classroom. Essentially, what will happen is with the QR code, we've created a Learning Upgrade webinar community. And for those of you that haven't used communities in WhatsApp, it's almost like an LMS or a hierarchy system where you can group your group chats. And so this is a way that you'll be able to use this for learning circles if you're facilitating multiple groups or just the one. And you'll be able to interact with your students, provide prompts, feedback, and facilitate learning there. So scan the QR code. We'll be showing this a few more times in the presentation. And then in about 30 minutes, we'll be doing a live demo in WhatsApp to show you how that works. So today it'll be me, Drew Robinson, and I'm joined by CEO and founder of Learning Upgrade, Vinod Lobo. And at our core, for those of you that know us, we're dedicated to providing life-changing education to all students everywhere they need us. And so that's our primary focus, and that's why we're focused on learning circles today, to be able to provide that synchronous and asynchronous blended approach in person, at home, wherever it meets the needs of the students best. And Learning Upgrade, in a nutshell, we have our breakthrough app. So we'll be covering that today. That'll be available to all of you, all of your students. For those of you that don't already have a Learning Upgrade license, we'll be touching on our learning management system, how you track and monitor students. We'll also be talking about how you integrate WhatsApp into your LMS activities to really drive the learning circles. And then we won't be covering the licensing today, but again, anybody that doesn't already have a license, you can have one at no cost for 3 months. So today we'll be going over what is a learning circle, briefly what is Learning Upgrade, getting started with a live demo on WhatsApp and our LMS, and then most importantly, we'll finish with best practices. So what have our deployments around the globe done to really optimize their chance of success for the students? So before I get started, just want to say a big thank you to David Rosen, Dr. David Rosen, for all the work and research that he does on learning circles constantly and really driving learning circles to the forefront of what we do and what a lot of programs are doing. And so you'll see a lot of references to David today, just because of all the fantastic work that he's done, the conversations that we've had with him, the research that we've been able to read of his. And for those of you that aren't familiar with his work in the WhatsApp group, I will be sharing that after the presentation today. I'll be sharing the slides, videos, and things like that in the WhatsApp group. So feel free to join. We can also share that via email as well. But in a nutshell, what is a learning circle? So a learning circle, by definition, is just going to be a group of learners that share a common interest or goal. They're going to meet regularly, and they're going to be focused on a specific topic. It supports blended learning, so that's the in-class and at home, or the synchronous, in-person, virtual versus at-home asynchronous. They're going to be flexible, and they're also peer-directed, building on that idea that every member has something to contribute and learn. This is really critical for new arrivals, refugees, and ESL students. Now, straight from one of Dr. David Rosen's papers, he gets into more detail on really for adult ed, what does this look like in real time for us? So a learning circle is going to be led by a teacher, a staff member, a volunteer, could be a mentor or a coach. And that facilitator, the members are all going to share an interest in the same subject or topic. And so he lists some of the topics, that we focus on. So that's going to be ESL, so English as a second language. It could be high school equivalency. We also have, financial literacy, work-life skills. We have math, so that GED HiSET course. We can create the learning circles to really be built around the needs of the students. As a site, we can have everybody in one group, but for the learning circles, what we want to do is really build out groups of 10, 15, 20 learners that are going to share that exact same topic area and try to put them with students that are going to be either at their level or close to. In addition to the online learning, we're going to have them meet once a week. So in some cases, that could be in person. In a lot of our deployments that we do, especially globally, that's going to be on Zoom, on Teams, or some other online meeting tool. Our goal is 60 to 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And there, it's going to be, that synchronous instruction. If our online courses are used as a supplement, it can be discussion time. We can go over things that students may have been having difficulty with in their work during the week, or we also provide prompts. And so even though we have our online learning tool, our app with multiple courses, built-in feedback and remediation, maybe students that are working on our ESL track, we can provide poetry prompts and then have questions. Tell us how you felt after you read this. What do you think the author's purpose was? And so interactions that they're having in the app on a gamification side where they're answering questions and receiving points, then they can do in the learning circles and have those discussions with peers and their tutor. So the main host of the learning circle is in the communities in US public libraries. We work with a lot of those, but a large number are also going to be in adult ed programs. And so some of you might be in attendance here. So I know we haven't done a formal introduction like most webinars do. And so I wanted to leave that to this point. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, and then also maybe what kind of program you're working with and how you're looking to bring learning circles to your program. So again, David has a fantastic model on what he calls HyFlex. And so HyFlex is really something that, we've learned from him, and then we're bringing to some of the programs that we work with. And that's, what you'll see in this diagram here is you have synchronous and asynchronous. So for that in-person instruction, that can be, synchronous, you're, in front of students, you're teaching, but synchronous can also be online. So this is synchronous right now, even though we're not in the same room. I'm presenting to you in a webinar format in real time. And so that's the synchronous model. And then there's also asynchronous. And so asynchronous is learning upgrade. You see the student here, this is in Cambodia, where they have access to the Learning Upgrade app. They're working on their own time. They're working independently in a self-paced environment. And the teacher, tutor, mentors can track and monitor all of their progress using the learning management system. And so with the conversations with David and some of the papers that I read that he put on this is, students are really at their best when they get to pick the balance that works best for their life. And so you'll see this flow here, synchronous, asynchronous, in-person, online, when students have the agency to pick the allocation of those that works best, we really can see their learning accelerate. So getting started at your program, the first thing you'll want to do is research learning circles. And so that's kind of a first step today in this webinar. Research the apps and the platforms. Today, of course, we'll be talking about the Learning Upgrade app and the students that'll have access to that, but there are other things out there. We'll identify the students and you'll want to market the program. So for some of you, this is pretty easy. If you're in an adult ed program or you already know who your students are going to be, all you need to do is talk to them about the app, talk to them about the learning circles, and get started. For those of you who might not know who your learners are, maybe you're excited about having learning circles, you're excited about providing ESL instruction to a group that has a need, but you're not currently serving that group, then the identification of those students will be critical for you. And we can talk about how you best do that a little bit later. From there, you're going to plan, structure, and sequence the learning circles. So timing is important. We don't just want indefinite periods where you're going to work for 2 years or 3 years. We like to structure it similar to a school year. So we're going to say maybe quarterly. We can do a 10 to 12-week learning circle. We have a defined start date. We have a defined end date. And we can set expectations for what we want these learners to do. In Learning Upgrade, our goal is to have them complete a full Learning Upgrade course. It's a 60-lesson course, requires about 25 hours time on task. And then the secondary expectation is that synchronous time on the weekend, where we have 60 to 90 minutes, or it could be during the week if that fits into your learner's schedule. And that really provides the balance there. From there, you're going to set up your circles. So I'll be showing you how we can do that in WhatsApp. Some programs are actually doing that in person. So those are a little bit easier to facilitate. We'll walk you through how to set up the learning management system. That's how you get students started. Curriculum, for us, that's Learning Upgrade. Again, we provide our English and math curriculum using the app. For some of you that are doing a blended approach, you might already have your in-class instruction curriculum that you're using, and something like Learning Upgrade can be a supplement to what you're already providing. And then you'll identify staff. So for traditional education, that's just going to be teachers, maybe a few volunteers. For some of you that are purely volunteer based, we'll talk about what the expectations are for volunteers. How do we vet volunteers to make sure that they have the technology skills and that they're equipped to serve the needs of these learners in the circles? Then we'll onboard learners. So our LMS makes that very easy. We can onboard students very quickly, get them up and running. We'll have them assessed using our English and math assessment, and then they'll be enrolled in the appropriate course. From there, we'll schedule the times. We'll let them know this is when we're going to meet each week for those 60 to 90-minute sessions. And then we want to help facilitate the learning. So that's the role of the volunteer. It might be in that 60 to 90-minute weekly meeting, but it can also be daily. We can send WhatsApp messages. What did you learn? Tell us about your experience and the lessons you completed yesterday. And you'll find very quickly that the volunteer can take a step back, and the learners in that learning circle become the ones that mentor each other and answer questions. So why are learning circles important? What we found globally, you'll see this picture to the right here is one of our deployments in Zambia, is that with learning circles and access to asynchronous education, learners are going to have the agency for the big questions. So what, how, and when. And so we're talking about when these students can learn. If they have a device and they have access, they can really find times that fit best with their schedule. If they have multiple jobs, if they have families, if they're balancing a load in life like many of our learners are. Learning circles are going to allow them to learn new processes and approaches, and that's going to be something that they'll usually get from their peers. And so if they're answering a question one way, and then in that learning circle, they see that somebody else approached it in a different way, that's something that can be difficult in the virtual environment, where you're working independently on an app or some other curriculum. You're only really getting feedback from yourself and what the program can provide you. In a learning circle with a group of 15 or 20 learners, when you're receiving prompts or discussion questions, everybody has a say, and it really gives students the ability to learn from each other. They're also going to be introduced to organizational learning. And so this is important for the job market and for their employment. We do have a work-life skills course. It's a new 30-lesson course that covers organizational structures in a workplace, but it's also critical to experience that in real time. So they'll understand what it's like to work with a mentor or a teacher that's providing prompts, but then also collaborative problem solving. That's a critical skill that they'll be able to get from this. Small groups encourage high involvement. So when you're in a big classroom, it can be difficult to feel like you have a place or to get involved, especially when it's synchronous. For all students, they don't always feel like raising their hand or participating in real time. But what we find with our WhatsApp learning circles, especially for ESL students, it gives them a chance to maybe run their answer through Google Translate, think about things, write things a few times, and participate when they're feeling like it's right for them. And so they really help get encouragement and involvement from students that you might not otherwise see that from. It also encourages the sharing of ideas and feedback. Again, something that we don't always see in a classroom setting. It's not always appropriate for a learner to just raise their hand and talk about how they feel about what you're talking about in your instruction. And the great thing about learning circles is that's always encouraged. And that's why I really want to show you how to set up communities and groups in WhatsApp. You can view communities like the classroom. Only admins can post to that board, and there's no ability for the students to post to that one. And so that's a great place for announcement, to post lessons, and it's a one-way feedback. Whereas in our WhatsApp groups, that's going to be an opportunity for your learners to post whatever they want, talk amongst each other, and that's how we like to keep those groups a little smaller. And all of that is going to help encourage the inclusion and that sense of belonging, where for us, we do a lot of deployments with Afghan refugees. And so even though they're all across the world right now, some are in Turkey, some are in India, we have some in Syria, Iran, you name it, we're working in 9 countries just with that deployment alone. And to know that there's other people out there in their same situation not all of it's always learning. They can talk about other topics and talk about how what they're learning applies to their current situation. So I'll come back to this, but what I want to really focus in on with Learning Upgrade is, we're going to guide you all the way with your site training and support. Again, with WhatsApp and everything else, it's not just today. Today really is an introduction. But after this, for those of you that already have licenses, or for those of you that want to get started, we do one-on-one site training and support to make sure that all of your questions are answered, and we can get this set up, exactly for your needs. We're going to talk about staffing. So if you already have staffing, great. But if you don't, I want to make sure you have all of your answers for who qualifies for that, who's best for that, and what their role looks like, what kind of students you're working with, how best to motivate them. What does their learning space look like for in-person? What kind of devices do they need? How much time should they set aside? The technology requirements and the lessons. And then finally, the learner support, so our onboarding parties, our celebrations, and what it looks like to provide your students with all the support they need. So before we get started with that, the key of the learning circles that we run, all students are going to have access to the Learning Upgrade app. And that's going to be something where they'll be onboarded by you or someone at your site, and they'll have access to all of our courses. So a little bit about us for those of you that might not be familiar. We're based out of San Diego. We've served over 3 million students now. A few years ago, we won the Adult Literacy X Prize, and that was a competition global to see if an app could get measurable gains in adult ed. And the Barbara Bush Foundation and Dollar General put out a $7 million prize. Over 100 teams from around the world entered. And at the end, we were named the co-grand prize winners. They used CASAS for the pre and post test. And so we were the grand prize winners for getting the highest gain in a field test of 12,000 learners, which was the largest ever done in adult ed. It's also a global solution. So we work well here in the US, K-12 and in adult ed. But we also work well for pre-literate refugees, new arrivals, individuals that may not have been in school for some time. You'll find a lot of other programs work really well for students that are right on the cusp of success, almost ready to pass GED and HiSET, almost ready for vocational training. But then, what about all the other students, which is the vast majority that need our assistance? Learning Upgrade is a solution for everyone, even if they're starting from the very beginning. We also meet all the federal standards. So US Adult Ed, we have all of the alignments that we can share again in the WhatsApp group where you can see all of that. And then we make it easy for technology. So we're integrated with text messaging, WhatsApp, and email. So here's a look at what we're doing right now. Of course, in the United States, we're in almost every state currently. We've been growing quite a bit. We just did a launch in Liberia, got started in Cote d'Ivoire and Ivory Coast. Told you a little bit about our launch in Zambia we've been doing. And then you can see with the refugees we're working with in Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Iran, and India. And that's continuing to grow. And a big reason for that is the learning circles that we set up. So they have access to our app, but they also have the social with each other. So before we get into what the app looks like, I just wanted to briefly talk about what's possible. So here's a story just about one of our learners at a refugee center in San Diego. And so this is Sudio, and she was a mom studying at home with 7 kids and really wanted to help with her kids. They were having difficulty with their work. They were learning English while she was learning English. And there wasn't a lot of programs that allowed for her to participate. Many required in-person instruction. Many were too expensive, and many just had schedules that didn't map with what was available to her. So she got access to Learning Upgrade at the UMI Learning Center, which is an after-school program for the kids, and also a community center for the adults. And she was able to jam through our courses. She got assessed at the very beginning for math and English, but worked through every single Learning Upgrade course, logged over 250 hours in the app in an 18-month period. And she's now taking credit-bearing courses at the local community college. So this is a journey that would have taken over 5 years in traditional adult ed, and she was able to do that in a year and a half. So a big part of that was motivation. She was able to work in the app because she really wanted to help herself and help her kids. The second part of that was timing. She had never had access to something that fit into her schedule. So when she put the 7 kids to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock, she was able to log 2 or 3 hours each night in the app. And then the third component, which was huge, was the learning circles that were built out around that. So at the UMI Learning Center and on WhatsApp, there were the communities of her peers, and they could talk about the app, talk about their learning, and really motivate each other based around that. And then they would get that once or twice a week at UMI Learning Center of in-class instruction with an instructor there. And so that's the story of one person. And then, one of our largest deployments globally that use learning circles, and they really helped us pioneer what we're doing with WhatsApp, is this focused humanitarian assistance. And this is our support with Afghan refugees. And the interesting thing there is, although we're in 7 countries, it's a volunteer-run organization, and all of the volunteers are in Canada. So the way we work with them is we get spreadsheets with the students, we get them onboarded into the learning management system, we do push notifications via their WhatsApp number, so they receive their credentials in Dari, their first language, in a WhatsApp group. We provide them with an onboarding video in Dari, so all of their first exposure to Learning Upgrade is in their first language. Then we build out the groups and communities, and a volunteer or a mentor will reach out to them, set expectations. Then we do a launch party. We have a big party with 200 or 300 people on each one. Family members attend. We talk about our expectations. We want you to log a minimum of 90 minutes a week in the app. We'd like you to complete 1 full Learning Upgrade course in this quarter. And then at the end, we're going to have a celebration where we'll acknowledge those who have completed certificates. And every single day, every single week, those mentors are in those groups, motivating the learners. And again, similar to our other deployments, after a week or 2, the volunteer can step back, and then the students and the learners take over. Now, what's interesting here is our high flyer groups from these first cohorts have become the mentors and tutors for the next group. So the recruitment of volunteers is something we hear a lot, especially from our library literacy centers. Post-COVID, they just don't have the same number of volunteers. And so what we find is that a lot of the students that had a lot of success in Learning Upgrade and were the students that were really driving a lot of the conversations in those learning circles, they become the next group of mentors and volunteers for students. They saw how valuable it was for them, and they want to provide the same experience to other students. And you really see the high activity when students have agency, when students are able to work asynchronously, when it fits into their schedule, they can really drive time on task. So here we started out, we wanted to have a pilot of about 100 students, but when we sent out that first video in Dari on WhatsApp, we ended up getting 800 in the first month. And then after 6 months, we were up to 2,000. And now we're serving over 5,000 students with this one program. And what was really incredible is not just the 44,000 hours, but the 12,000 certificates. Those are full Learning Upgrade courses, which cover a full grade level of academic content. And it's not just time on task where they're, going on there and spending time like, some of the game-based apps, but they're actually learning. And so you can see they use CEFR, that's the Common European Framework, but I have a CASAS and NRS alignment for those that aren't familiar there. So you'll see which is expected for refugees. The pre-A1 is 92% of that first group of 800. And so we assess them, and that CEFR score is going to be 92%. And then after 6 months on Learning Upgrade, you can see that we're down to 16%. And of that group, those are the students that pretty much didn't get started. So in 6 months, if learners are going to use Learning Upgrade, they're going to put in the time. At a minimum, they're going to see at least 1 level gain for their time in the app. And so you can see that takes them from a 180 up to a 200. And of course, our goal is if we can get them spending enough time in the app, is to get everybody above that low literate of 210 in the first 6 months to 9 months, and then really accelerate their growth towards full proficiency, and then have them start with our math and job skills. So you can see our app here. We have 24 available courses. You can see our English. Again, every student will start out with a placement, and they'll get placed somewhere into one of these courses. Every single course is 60 lessons. It starts out with instruction. We teach using songs, video, and games. So if you look at our app as an instructor and say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, we really don't design it for instructors. We design it really for the students. We design it for the individuals that are going to be learning in these learning circles. And so we try to look at how they spend their time. And it really isn't reading 50-page PDFs. It isn't reading 500-page textbooks unless they're forced to. We want to see how they spend their time naturally. And that's on social media. It's on Instagram. It's on TikTok. It's on YouTube. It's on watching bite-sized, easy to consume content. And even though they spend way more time on that than they would elsewhere, it doesn't feel like it. When you're watching 1 or 2 minute recipe videos, 15-second dancing clips, you can string those together to build out a few hours a day. And so our goal is to do that with learning as well. We want to grab their attention with the songs, do 2 to 3 minutes of instruction. Then the gamification kicks in, where they're going to be answering practice questions, which essentially makes our app just one long form assessment because we're constantly testing them, constantly giving them practice. Every single practice question that they have, we have built-in feedback and remediation, so they get the correct answer right away, but we walk them through how to answer it correctly. We have formulas, we have drag and drop, we have arrows. We bring the content to life to ensure that we're not just skipping ahead if they don't understand. We'll scale it back and let them build up their skills and confidence in the app. And that's really what drives the binge learning, just like binge watching, those bite-sized lessons with high engagement. And that's how we get the accelerated growth. Here you'll see a course map. So the students are going to move through 1 through 60. Each one of our lessons, you're looking at 10 to 20 minutes, and then a full course averaging 25 hours. Some of the earlier courses, if a student already has a little bit of English proficiency, they might go through it quicker. For those that are brand new to English, introduction to the alphabet, they might take a little bit more time. And here's just a quick look of what the instruction looks like. So top right and bottom left is the instruction component. Again, initially it's done with the narrator, walks them through the lesson. Then we do the same instruction, but in the form of a song, really helps them remember that, but also drives engagement and interest. And then after that, they get the bottom right, which is the practice questions. So this is volume of a rectangular prism. We're going to drag and drop numbers into the formula. We'll click submit. Here you see we got it wrong. So we reset. So now we have all 4 green. So we're dragging and dropping. After your answers are in, you click go. Red is going to be the incorrect. A narrator will come on and let the learner know that they got it incorrect. And then in the right, we'll show the formula and go through every single step to make sure they can answer it correctly the next time. So here's what's possible when your learners are able to get time on task. So when we start out, we're looking at 1 hour a week. And that means in 6 months, they'll get through a full grade level of academic content. So they're going to cut their time in half. It might be even better if they're working in a blended situation where they have in-class instruction as well. But in cases where this is it for the learner, then they're cutting their time in half. You can see the magic happens though when we can get to 2 and 4 hours a week. All of a sudden, we're getting through English 1 to English 5, that NRS level 4 or 5 in a 6-month period. And now we're really accelerating the growth. They're sharing these stories in their learning circles and encouraging each other to continue. So this is everything in the Learning Upgrade app. And again, all of this is available to every single one of your students, but they're going to start out, if they're pre-literate, on English Basic, work their way up to 5. We have our language proficiency for TOEFL or IELTS. We have full math curriculum, 10 courses from basic all the way up through algebra. And then we have our GED prep and then work life skills. So learners could dramatically change their earnings from extreme poverty all the way up to middle income in 380 hours of work. And so that seems like a lot, and it's a number we don't tell the students. Our focus is, hey, if we could do 1 hour a day, look how much this would change your life. And so when we start those learning circles, we set expectations, we talk about how much time we'd like to see with them. Start small, maybe start 90 minutes a week. For those groups that you see attaining that 90 minutes a week, then you can increase it. And once you see the ones starting to get to that 1 hour a day, then you can really bring out the entire course map and really show them what's possible if they continue on their path. So now we'll start getting into the live portion of it. Before, I just want to do a brief conversation about our learning management system. And so we'll do a separate training on this for those of you that have a license, but our learning management system is fantastic. This is where you're going to onboard your students. This is where you're going to create your initial classes. It's where you'll send your credentials, and then you'll also track and monitor all of your student growth and progress. So with that, I'm going to stop my share here and then head into the browser. And that way we can do a live look at the learning management system and how you'll get that set up for your own learning circles. Okay, so now you can see what it looks like to be logged into the learning management system. For those of you that have a license, you're already familiar with this screen. For those of you that'll just be getting started, you'll fill out your pilot form. And then once you fill out the pilot form, we'll get you set up with your credentials. Today, we're just going to be talking about the teacher role, but we have a host of other roles. So if you're an admin or a coordinator that needs to track multiple sites, no problem at all. We'll be able to help get you set up there. So step number one when you log in is, of course, to create a class. And so you just create a new class. Today, we'll just do a basic demo. And this one will be empty. You'll log in. And then the first thing you'll want to do is onboard students. And so we've made that pretty straightforward. You'll just add a new student. Our goal is to usually upload student information. And so in this case, you're going to download a template. And then when you download the template, what you'll be able to do is then re-upload it once you filled it out. Our system will look at what you added into the template that we provided, and then you'll get a pre-flight. So you'll see here, you can verify that the names, the grade level, email. What's critical for setting up our learning circles is that we also have their phone and their WhatsApp. Most cases, it'll be the exact same number. And then we can see that all of our notifications are turned on. So in this case, that looks good, and we'll exit. Now, for those of you that don't have a spreadsheet, or maybe you don't know who your students are going to be, you can also do invite student. And in this case, we'll generate a code, and then you can download a guide. And in this case, students will self-enroll based on the instructions on the guide. They'll walk through, follow the steps, and then as they go through that self-enrollment, you'll see them populated in your class here. So now that we've talked about onboarding, we can go over to our populated class, and this is what it'll look like once you get your students enrolled, or if you have them self-enrolled, this is where they would show up. So what you can do here is a few actions. So first step is, okay, I uploaded a spreadsheet. Now, how do I provide my students with their credentials? You can select them or select all. In this case, I'll just select me. And then in perform actions, we'll do send message. And then we'll do send credentials. Let's say I'm a first language Dari speaker, so I'll do Dari. I can prepare my message. And so now as an instructor, I can see, okay, I'm verifying that the WhatsApp number is there, the email is there, I have all of my notifications turned on, and then I get a little pre-flight of the message as well. So in that case, everything looks good. I'll click send. And now the LMS will tell me, okay, the WhatsApp message was sent, SMS was sent, and then my email's pending. And so that one's being sent now. So as you watch this, you'll be able to verify that everything's going out, and you'll see exactly when it gets sent. In this case, I know it was successful because I have my phone right here, and I just got the message on WhatsApp, text message, and email. So once you've done that, your students have all of the information that you need to provide them to get started. You can also follow up using WhatsApp here. So we can send a personal WhatsApp message, and that's just going to open up the WhatsApp app. And so we'll be taking a look at the live WhatsApp app in a bit. But for now, just want to let you know that that's available. There's a few other features and functions here in the learning management system that we won't be covering today. But again, for those of you with current licenses, or for those that would like to get started, I'll be able to help you with that. And then also on the call today is Rachel Buddy, and she's fantastic. She does all of the training for New Readers Press. And so she'll be reaching out to those of you that'll be signing up for the new pilot, and you'll get a training customized for your needs, and you'll be able to walk through all the functionality to get up and running here. But today, since the focus is on learning circles, I really want that to be the focus of the live demo. And so we'll be jumping into that part now. So I'm going to stop my share of my browser here. And then what we're going to do just briefly is go back to PowerPoint. And the reason for that is if you're using WhatsApp, it's going to look a little bit different on mobile versus if you're looking at it on desktop. So for the live demo, we're going to be doing it on desktop, but I want you to see what it looks like in mobile for those of you that are mobile only. So on the left here, you'll see your chats, and that's pretty standard for WhatsApp. And so that's going to be your individual communication. Or if you're a student and you're in a group, this is where your group will show. Now, as an instructor for Learning Circles, the first thing you're going to want to do is at the bottom in the dead center, you'll see where it says Communities. So you'll click on Communities, and that's going to be the second image here. And you'll see I have two communities created. So I have my Learning Upgrade community, and then I have LU Webinars. So for those of you that scanned the QR code and got started with the LU Webinars at the beginning, this is the group that you would have been joining. And what you'll want to take note of here is underneath your community, you'll see groups. So when you see the megaphone, that's going to be the admin default community group. And this is going to be created with every community. So the second you create a community, they're going to create an announcement group for you. And in this announcement group, students can't write back to you. This is a one-way street on communication. So this is where you put your announcements and things like that to the main group. Once you've created your announcement group, that's when you can go ahead and create secondary groups. And these are your learning circles where the students can interact with each other. And so it might be difficult to understand for those of you that haven't interacted with WhatsApp before. But again, in follow-up trainings and in the live demo, hopefully it'll be a little more clear and you'll get a chance to see exactly how that works in real time. So once you've clicked on New Community, you'll create your community. Just like LU Webinars, you'll have your announcement group. The next thing you'll want to do is open up your announcement group. You'll click on that, and then you'll see your third group here. And so you'll see in the third group, your group, you'll see the people that have joined it. So in this case, it's me and my colleagues, Vinod and Haneen. And then what you'll want to do is invite to group via link. And so I invited them with the link, and then I can also invite anybody else with the link. The second they click on that, they will join this group. And the nice thing is no matter how many groups you create for your community, you can generate a link for each one of those and have your students join. So there really isn't a lot of work to do to get your students up and running there. So now that you've seen it on mobile, what I'll do is I'm going to share live my WhatsApp desktop app. So just know it might look a little bit different, but it'll be the exact same features and functionality. All the click-throughs will be the same. And for those of you that'll be using your WhatsApp desktop, you'll be good to go. So here we have WhatsApp on desktop. So I see the first thing is in my LU Webinars, all of you that have joined, which is great. I'm going to click on Communities here. So just like Communities, when I was looking at my mobile, I'm able to see my communities on this side here. And so I have my LU Webinar, I have my announcement group. And when I click here, I want to do Add Group. And so in this case, I can create a group and I can create it with anybody that was in my announcement group, which is in most cases what we'll do. And then I can do my announcements from that. So since this one's empty, you're not going to learn that much. And so the one I want to show you is a group that I'm a part of. And so this is going to be for a course that teaches people how to plant. And so if you want to learn how to plant vegetables, you want to learn how to plant trees, this is an upcoming course. And so you'll see here on day one, this is how you can learn what kind of plants you're going to do. Here is how you prepare the land. On day 3, it's secrets of plants. And then on day 4, it's how to develop a green finger or a green thumb. For the translation, it's a little different. So the nice thing here is I'm a part of this group, and you'll see that only admins can send messages. And so this is going to be the announcement group here. And in the announcement group, the instructor here has uploaded videos. In this group, I can learn about some expectations, what I'm going to learn. And so this is a place where you can do that. As a student, I can respond to these videos. But most importantly, I'm just going to be receiving notifications. I'll be receiving calendar invites and set my expectations there. Now, if this class starts, which is going to be on the 20th of March, that's when I'm going to be placed into a group. And that's where I'll be able to interact with other students. We can talk about what we're learning, talk about what we're experiencing, hopefully successful, but also if not successful. And that's really where all of that peer-to-peer interaction will take place. So again, the community, the announcement, that's where the teacher talks to all students. Then the instructor will create groups, and that's where it's going to be my opportunity to interact with the other students. So I hope that's clear. It can be a little abstract when you're looking at groups that aren't yours. But again, today's just a first introduction on using WhatsApp. When we do our follow-up trainings, we'll be able to walk you through live how to get this set up with your account, with your students, and guide you through every step of the way. So there, I'm going to stop sharing my WhatsApp, and we will go back to the slides, and we can go over in a little more detail what this all looks like. So reaching back, let's talk about the site training and support. So before I get started on site training and support, while I'm going through this, I did see a few individuals using the chat, and thanks Vinod for taking care of those. Also Rachel, but feel free to, if you have any questions, if you'd like to have anything answered in a little more detail, feel free to use that there. And fantastic, I see from Amy, had a fantastic experience as a student in a WhatsApp group while in Jumpstart, a New York City-based. Oh, wow. So you're teaching plant-based nutrition. So I'd actually love to see a link to that, Amy, if you'd be willing to share either here or offline. It's the exact same kind of class that I'm in right now. But again, yeah, feel free to use the chat here in Zoom if you do have any questions on what we're covering today. So again, that first step is going to be the site training and support, and it's on everything. So it'll be the Learning Upgrade app, it'll be the learning management system, but most importantly, it's going to be how do we get your learning circle set up on WhatsApp that's going to meet the needs of all of your students. And that'll be done by Learning Upgrade or by New Readers Press, myself or Rachel. And we'll be able to provide training and support to admins, teachers, tutors, coaches, and mentors. So first conversation is usually exploration or exploratory. And that's a conversation that takes place either before we meet, or if you just want to have a quick phone conversation to decide if this is going to be a good fit for your program, what you're doing, if you want to see if this is going to work and be ideal for a deployment that you have in mind. The next will be planning. So that usually takes place where it's just me or Rachel with an admin. And then we can really define exactly what we want to do, how we're going to deploy this, how it's going to work best. And that's when the large scale training takes place. And that's where an admin or a coordinator will invite all of the teachers, tutors, mentors, and that's going to be a much more structured training because we've already done the exploration, we've done the planning, and now we can provide crystallized and finite expectations for everybody that's going to be participating in the deployment. Once we get things started, in about 6 to 8 weeks, we'll set up another meeting. And that's when we talk about optimization. We want to hear your feedback, what's working, what's not working, and then also go into the LMS and get into the reports that you're really able to optimize once students start logging a lot of activity so that you can track and monitor all of their progress at the individual level, at the site level, and then also if you're working with funders or state level funding to really show impact, we want to make sure you have access to all of those reports. And training will cover everything there. So best practices, the most successful deployments are going to be the ones that get everyone trained and get them trained quickly. Sometimes we'll see programs that have staggered training where they'll have 1 or 2 people that get up to speed very quickly, and then they'll have 60, 70% that don't get logged in for 3 or 4 weeks. Those ones tend not to go as well because you have 1 or 2 classrooms that are very successful and then a few others that don't get off to a good start. So our goal is to, in this first training here, so for the deployment training, to have every stakeholder present, make sure they're trained, make sure we have crystal clear objectives, they know how to get students onboarded, set up their learning circles, and then hold them accountable from there. And then the larger deployments, they can really benefit from when the teachers and tutors create a learning circle of their own. So, we talk about creating them for the students, But what most of our deployments do is they'll also create one for the teachers and tutors, and that way they can share best practices and communicate with each other for deployments where they're not in person. If you're in an adult school where you're seeing each other every day, it's pretty straightforward. But we work with some refugee agencies that have volunteers all across the United States. And in those cases, with different time zones and not being in person, it's important for them to have that sense of community as well. So how does it work? So step number one is we'll start with the training. Then we're going to onboard your students. And in this onboarding, we're not just providing them with their credentials, but also they'll be enrolled in a learning circle. We'll provide you access to the reporting so you can track and monitor progress. And then we're going to celebrate student growth at the end. The next thing we talked about in our bullets is staffing. And so this is important for those of you that are relying on volunteers. So you'll see here in bullet number one is, ideal size for management is usually going to be about 1 to 20, 1 to 25. But we do have deployments where one volunteer is working to up to 100, and in one case, even 200 students. It's fantastic for the LMS. In the LMS, there's really no hard cap on that. We have some schools where there's one tech coordinator at a school that manages 1,000 students at some of our middle schools. But for our learning circles, what we want to do is manage the groups and keep them reasonable to where conversations can take place and not get lost. And we find that 20 to 25 on WhatsApp is kind of the high end, with 15 to 20 being the sweet spot. For time expectations, volunteers are going to spend about 5 hours per week at the startup. And that's going to be to get students onboarded, the initial reach out, the creating of the learning circle groups in WhatsApp, and then just facilitating the initial conversations. After that, again, the students will be able to go from there and they'll start driving a lot of the conversations. Volunteers need to be familiar with basic tech. So as long as they have a phone, maybe have access to a laptop and have reliable internet access, they'll be able to facilitate everything they need. They should have a WhatsApp account. And in most cases, it helps if they're familiar creating groups already and sending messages. The nice thing with WhatsApp is it is the app of communication globally. US is the only one that's not the case, where iMessage is the lead. But when we talk globally, especially for our low income students, WhatsApp is the app. And that's because Facebook or Meta makes WhatsApp free. So individuals don't have to worry about data caps when they're using the apps. Volunteers are going to have access to the LMS. And again, we'll cover all of that in the training. And volunteers for our low literate adults. So when students take that initial assessment and learning upgrade for that NRS 1 or 2 or the CEFR A1, so pre-literate, if they are an English learner, it's nice for the volunteer to be able to converse in that learner's first language, especially in a learning circle. If you're going to have 15 students whose first language is Spanish, and that is their primary language of communication, it's helpful if the volunteer can also speak Spanish as their first language, or whatever the first language of that group may be. Once the students are testing at our English Upgrade 3, so that NRS 3 up, then they can be English only. Those volunteers are easier to recruit, and then it's no problem at all. So volunteers don't need education experience, and so they don't have to be educators. They don't have to be credentialed. Of course, for blended instruction, it's fantastic in our adult schools that is the case, where the teacher has time with them in the classroom, and then they can also help with this in other situations. But for those that are a library or a literacy center, and all you have is volunteers from different backgrounds, they don't need the credential or the education experience. The tech experience will be all that they need. So Anna has a question. So once the student is onboarded, so how long should they commit on a weekly basis? And that's a fantastic question, and perfect time because it goes right into the next slide. But the short answer there is that our goal is to have this done quarterly. We find that works best. And so we do quarterly, usually 12 weeks, and that allows enough time for students to get onboarded, work during a 10 to 11 week period after the onboarding week, finish a full learning upgrade course, and then have that celebration at the end. So once they do get onboarded and we create that learning circle in WhatsApp, what we want to do is clearly define the topics, the goals, the expectations. And so we don't want to have it be vague where we're just throwing them into a group and saying, figure it out. the topic is critical. Maybe it's ESL, and we say, listen, ESL is our focus. I want you working on the Learning Upgrade English track, take the English placement, and then I want you to finish your full Learning Upgrade course within this first quarter. And that's going to lead into those goals and expectations. So not only do I want you to finish the course, but I'd like you, to complete 60 to 90 minutes per week as we get started in order to finish that. And that's also going to help with the motivation. So the other things we want to do is set expectations for self-paced versus group. And so in some cases, we want everybody working on the same course at the exact same time. In others, we say, hey, just get started, work at your own pace. And it doesn't really matter which English course you're working on. We just want you to be logging in. Setting goals, hours versus course completion. Some will say, hey, I'd like 5 hours a week. Others will say I would like 5 lessons a week. But it's important to be clear about that. Our synchronous versus asynchronous time, hey, on Saturday, I'd like everybody to be from 12 to 1. We're going to do a Zoom session. Everything else will be done in the WhatsApp group. And then supplemental versus core. Again, if you're in traditional adult ed and students are showing up to lecture, they have homework, you have your own in-class curriculum, Learning Upgrade is more of a supplement. Just make sure that all of those expectations are crystal clear to your groups as they get started. And then we want to define the timeline for each group of students. And that's the question that we just had from Anna Maria. And so that's going to be quarterly, ideally. For those of you that already have an established curriculum based on a different timeline, go with that. And that way the students will have it on the same timeline as your school. Now the learning space, that's going to vary based on your program. And so you'll see for some of our deployments where they don't have access to devices or internet at home, that might be a computer lab. For those that have devices and Wi-Fi at your center, that can be done there. And then completely asynchronous, that can be done on a device at home. And so once we establish, what the learning space looks like for each group, that'll also help us set expectations. And then we want to start each learning circle with a launch onboarding party. So I talked about that with our Focus Humanitarian Refugee Assistance Group. That's with 200 or 300 students. We get everybody on Zoom. We set the expectations for their lessons. But what really helps is we have individuals from previous quarters come on, and they'll give their, testimony of how Learning Upgrade has impacted their life. They'll tell their peers about what they learned. Some of it'll be in English, some of it'll be in Dari, but it helps provide the motivation for those that might just be getting started. And then the technology and lessons. So for students, we find, now that we're almost all mobile, very little tech checks need to be done. Device penetration in the United States is incredible. We're getting close to 100%. Everybody knows how to download apps. They know how to launch apps, and all of the gestures needed to get started, drag and drop, long presses, swipes are already there. Almost all of our students are also using WhatsApp on a daily basis. And so very little training is needed there. We actually find that all of our WhatsApp training is with the instructors at the school level, and we almost never have to train our students on how to use it, just because it is their communication app of choice. Learning Upgrade is available on iOS, Android, and the web. And then WhatsApp is available on iOS, Android, and the desktop app that I was able to show you. Tutors, again, expectations are pretty low. They don't really need much more than the standard online skills: get online, have a device, how to launch an app, and then of course do our coaching, how to create communities and groups. And then we also provide some additional lessons for those of you that would like it. And so this can be done. What we do is we just set up a shared document. So, sometimes we'll hear from volunteers, I'd really like to help, but once I get that group created, what do I share? What do I do? How do I facilitate those conversations? And so we have this shared document, and it's a new shared doc for each deployment that we do, just because your needs they'll be a little bit different. So in some cases, we'll just share a video. It might be a 90-second inspirational video, and they can hear from somebody that went through Learning Upgrade. In another case, it might be, a Learning Upgrade intro in their first language. And then for the instructor, we also have these timeline calendars. So if we want to provide prompts, we can say, okay, we're working with our basic group. So these are pre-literate adults. And then for our first weekend, let's cover alphabet basics. And then we have a linked folder called Alphabet. And here we're going to have a bunch of static prompts. So we do provide access to what we call a teacher whiteboard, which is a live version of everything that we have for those of you that would like to demo live on Zoom. But we find for WhatsApp, sometimes static images work better. So you can do these with a screenshot, or we can share these files with you. And there what you can do is, okay, English Upgrade 4 lesson 20. Let's have them read this paragraph, and then we can provide the questions and get a discussion going based on this for this one question. For those of you that would like notebooks, we also do provide a PDF for those that would like to print off a notebook, and these help drive discussions as well. And our goal there is while they're working through Learning Upgrade, they can fill out their course, their lesson, take notes, and that really helps them frame their conversations in the Learning Circle communications every day. But on those weekend conversations, they can say, okay, name one thing that you learned, maybe name one thing that you struggled with, and they can go back to their notes and talk about what that may have been. And then the final thing is learner support. So we want to finish each round of Learning Circles with a celebration. We print certificates. We want to highlight success stories. For our high flyers, those that completed multiple Learning Upgrade courses, let's have them come on, share their stories, talk about their experience, and allow that to build momentum for that next quarter, the next group of students that come through. And then in a lot of cases, it's the same students, but instead of being on English Basic, NRS 1, now they're NRS 2 or 3, they're in a new group or a new circle, maybe some of the same people, and they can continue their journey from there. So that's everything I wanted to cover today. I know it's a lot. Introduction to a new topic. We covered the Learning Upgrade app, the learning management system. Also, maybe for some of you, brand new experience getting into WhatsApp communities and groups, what that looks like to set up your learning circles, how you do that, the prompts, best practices. So I hope today was valuable as an introduction. And again, for those of you that would like to learn more, for those of you that would like to have more questions and see what it looks like for your program, please reach out to myself, drew@learningupgrade.com, or Rachel. I believe she provided her email there at ourbuddy@proliteracy.org. And we'd be more than happy to walk you through and get things dialed in even more. And for those of you that haven't already, again, scan the QR code, join our WhatsApp group, and I will be sharing the PDF to these slides. I'll be sharing some of the research that David Rosen has done on Learning Circles. It's a fantastic read and has really helped us a lot as we build out these models. And then any other questions that you have, we'll be able to answer there. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And like actually...
yeah, I've got a couple of announcements there, Drew. Thank you so much. Maybe while I'm doing this, you can check, and there are a couple more questions in chat. Perhaps you and Vinod might want to address before we go. So yeah, thank you for joining us today and learning a little bit about how to support learning beyond the classroom with Learning Circles and Learning Upgrade. I want to share with you the following information about 3 free courses available from Pro Literacy. So in the first, called Introduction to Learning Circles, you'll learn what learning circles are and why they're effective. You'll hear from students, facilitators, and program staff about the benefits of learning circles and why they enjoy using them. Learning Circles for administrators and site coordinators, the next one. In that one, you'll learn, let's see, you'll show program staff all you need to know to successfully implement the Learning Circles. You'll learn about logistics, recruiting students and facilitators, how to identify curriculum and other resources, and what kind of tech support students and tutors are going to need. And then in Learning Circles for facilitators, the third one you see there, facilitators learn how to ask questions, to foster discussion, and manage a small group. You'll identify resources to help you provide tech support. You'll see online course materials and lesson plans that other facilitators have used, and you'll hear from experienced facilitators. So these 3 courses are on EdNet at the link that's highlighted there, and I'll put it in a follow-up email as well. And you can access those for free. All you have to do is visit that link, and if you don't already have an account, you can set up a free account. That's all that I wanted to say. Anything else, Drew?
No, thank you for having us, and thank you everyone for attending.
Okay, and I also included some other links in like how to contact New Readers Press, your representative, how to request a pilot, how to find more information about Learning Upgrade, and I will make sure all of those links are in the follow-up email that we send out. Watch for that probably on Monday. And thank you once again for joining us with New Readers Press and Learning Upgrade.